Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Redwood Library in Athenæum. I'm Benedict Lecca, Executive Director, and I'm speaking to you from Newport, Rhode Island. We are pleased you are joining us this evening for tonight's lecture, presented in partnership with the Newport Middle Passage Port Marker Project, as poets Afua Ansong and Jacqueline Johnson share their poetry and discuss their creative process. I want first to welcome Elizabeth Folk to the screen and thank her for her assistance in arranging tonight's program. She is a writer, educator, and co-senior editor of the Ocean State Review. She holds a PhD in English from the University of Rhode Island and is a committee member of the Newport Middle Passage Port Markers Project. Elizabeth will introduce our poets and moderate the discussion. And then at the very end, I'll come back on to thank everyone and take some questions. Thank you all, and welcome, Elizabeth Folk.
Thank you, Benedict. And I'd like to thank the Redwood Library and I can never say that right, Athenæum, for their support and collaboration with the Newport Middle Passages Port Markers Project. And I'd like to encourage the people who are in attendance tonight to check us out at the Newport Middle Passages Port Markers website. And if you're a Newporter, it would be great to have you become involved with what we're doing. So it is my pleasure to introduce our poets for this evening. I approached Afua Ansong and Jacqueline Johnson and asked them to be part of this event because both women's poetry overlaps and intertwines with themes that are integral to the work and mission of the Newport Middle Passages Port Markers Project. Themes of memory, upheaval, community, and connection. Our first reading will be from Afua Ansong. Afua Ansong is a scholar and artist currently pursuing a PhD in English literature at the University of Rhode Island. Her work interrogates representations of Black female subjectivities and African diaspora literature. She is currently working on a collection of poems about the material, culture, and poetic elements of the Andiqua symbols from Ghana. Specifically, she is recording how art serves as a mode of expression and survival for enslaved Akans in bondage. She has published work in Prairie Schooner, Four-Way Review, Maine Review, and other journals. She has received fellowships from Breadloaf and Blue Mountain Center, where she is coming to us tonight from her residency there. More of her work is at afuaansong.com, and I will post that in the chat area. And Afua, over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So excited to be here. I'm in this space of recollecting memories of self. And I'm going to go straight in. I'm going to be reading from my first chapbook, which I wrote here at BMC, called American Mercy. I don't know if you all can see that. And I'm going to begin with prayer. Every morning, I speak to God first. I cannot see him, and that is all better for me. I do not pretend to be clean under my nails or perfume my mouth with mint. I imagine he sits across from me, watches me unplug sleep from my eyes. He will reveal a parable, illuminate a dream, or observe the world with me through my broken window pane. We mourn this God. We can see him. We pretend cleanness in her speech, scream defeat through her mouth. God inside her, we outside her, waiting to overtake, reveal ourselves. Dimness inside her world, observing us through her red eyes. The next poem is How Does Afua Survive the War? All she does is write and says she wants to be free, and no one understands what leaving a mother behind did for her language. She opens herself to a kiss like dew, spitting on earth, and every tear her pillow soaks tastes of the red miseries of forgetting home. As I was writing American Mercy, I thought about the idea of who gets to give mercy to someone, right? So as an immigrant, I think a lot about borders, about boundaries, about leaving home, coming to a new place and calling it your home. And so many of these poems question this idea of mercy, of engagement with borders, engagement with nationality. I'm going to read a poem called Essay Retreat, which I wrote during a time when I was tutoring a couple of students, ESL students, who were writing their college essays. Essay Retreat. Write about an interesting article of clothing in your closet. Francisco sticks pen to loose leaf when I ask him to focus. He says, I can't answer that question. I don't have a closet. It is the loudest spring day in Southampton. The glass reaches for the sun's glare and rubs it on my forehead. You have a wall, I argue. It has pictures of the family he left in Colombia. In his second language, I tell him, write about what hurts the most, about leaving a place you cannot return to. Joseph draws landscapes, describes it as a rhetorical reality. He is not a twin. Reina, who lives under the same roof, is in this class too. She interprets him. Erica, all the way to the border, all the way to deportation, left soccer balls with her best friends. They are pillows. They will dream of her when they retire their goals. Erica, who lost a boy who said he would wait. Erica, who has America but nothing else. Rebecca is Portuguese. See how this quest to travel keeps us in cages. See how when I grate my teeth, my gums smell of the Atlantic Ocean, the wet screams of my ancestors. I don't vomit my fears. I don't say you two will sit in a bathroom stall and cry your throat out in mother tongue. I don't describe the knots that will tie in their stomachs, force them to search for familiar flavors. I don't tell them ever since I left, there's been nothing present but self. The final poem I will read from American Mercy is the title poem, which is American Mercy, which is just a long poem. American Mercy. These borders crossed me. Land of my own and now owner of nobody's land. Illegal lines of regulations are drawn on my grandmother's face each time I ask her how many children her husband had and how many slaves have these American grounds birthed, the ones that belonged, the ones whose babies suckled and nestles on nipples bright as a whip on already broken skins. These borders who know that land is for sucking blood and water is for carrying home the weak. And how many times should I ask the trees that inhale the longing of my generation, these ones alive in dearth? I find myself in a shell of heating coal, and often I turn to ash or I am fire, keeping vapor in a lake's mouth. I'm going to read two poems from my third collection that is coming out in the fall. The first is Palm Reader, and the title of the collection is Black Ballad. And I'm sort of recollecting songs of Blackness, Blackness as African and Blackness as African American. Palm Reader. From my room, I hear my mother say, breast cancer, and sing a low, oh. She repeats what her aunt says, lemon leaves mixed with something sweet. When she hangs up the phone, she whispers, she must have been in pain recovering from these scars alone. My breasts are small, young mountains in my cupped hands. The left line in both palms lean further in from the right. I want to grow lemon trees to erase diseases from my bloodline. The spaces between my fingers are islands. I lay my body there to rest. The stub to my 11th finger breathes a genuine rhetoric. If one member is removed, a string of memories remains. The mother to my mother's mother wore light for 70 years. The folds in my palm bend my hands to age. The taste of lineage is sour, running rancid. The next poem is Counting Bodies, which thinks about the ways in which Black bodies are being extinct. At the BX19 stop, and BX, I want to say that this was written in New York. Counting Bodies. At the BX19 stop, Black boys to my right count bodies, fog on the lips of spring, one boast of 16 and the other short with a backpack, hugging his thin back says 17. He hits the timid one in the stomach who yells, "I'm not a virgin." They leave him alone. They must be, 15 and a half. I stare at a fat pigeon folded on the telephone poles and count all 6 of them. I chant, "Stay alive, stay alive, stay alive, stay alive." The final poem from this collection is called Cocoa. Mommy's small hands open into the pod. She tells us to pluck and suck the white seeds, tells us you are eating cocoa, tangy and welcoming. She brings it to us. Mommy says she knows the cocoa, what it tastes like, as if she had met Fernando Po, who held her hands as they tore the fruit from trees in the dry forest. I wonder why it is yellow and not black. 10-year-old girls with no knives between our thighs. We wait, watch her slam the pod on the ground to bless it with a crack. I hold the buttons of my uniform and feel the smoothness of my chest instead, though Essie's chest is ripe. My season brings me nothing. I ask Mommy, what should we do with this seed? And she says, spit it out. I'm happy to share my final poems from the Adinkra collection, which is Try Kissing God. And in each poem in that collection accompanies an Adinkra symbol, which are a set of ideographs from the Akan people of West Africa. And each of these symbols hold philosophical and didactic values for the Akan people. And many African Americans have come to appreciate and value these symbols as a way to connect to their lineage. I'm going to read the first poem, which is Adinkra Hene, which is sort of the foundation of the Adinkra symbols. Adinkra Hene, king of the Adinkra symbols. In the dream, you are God. Ink and water worship you. The spines of shapes offer themselves as sacrifice to your imagination. You drink in and thirst no more. Your hands are tied to your back. In the dream, you are wet. Splashes of ink drip from your right hand. You sit on the cold floor with your feet sinking into a rock. In the dream, you lie on brown grass to wail. Thick drops of ink fall to your face, not like dew, but as though someone else were at a loss. Your wife or children inheriting your sorrow. You dip your fingers into your jaw to draw shapes on a white slate. In the dream, you are the red tree bark cut into pieces by a farmer and cooked in a cauldron, high heat with borrowed water. You bubble and overflow. When the sun sets, you cool. In the dream, you are a calabash carved into the shape of a vase. The humans pour something into you, thick and fiery. They leave a bat at the curl of your lips, and it drinks until you are empty. One common symbol is the sankofa, which is a chicken reaching to its back to get an egg. And the sankofa symbolizes going back for your lineage, going back for sort of anything that might have been forgotten for you traditionally, your customs. Sankofa, Go back for it, return for it. In the naming of things after things, you are named after no one, not the red-eyed crab or the shooting gun. Your sister carries her ancestors' names the way a fighter carries praise for war. She is named after the living and the dead. She is the afterlife, and you are the present. When she raises her lower lip so high it almost touches her nose, you see your grandmother and your aunt and her. Others see it too and say how you don't take her face, but how you stole the ears and chin of your mother. At least your large forehead belongs to you, or was it a gift of excess clay? You were not even named after a tree, given solace to the sacrificial goat. So how would they know where to return you when the thing that loves you calls you home? My final poem, which is coming to be one of my favorite poems, is Jinyame and Nyajide. Jinyame, receive God, or if not, for God. J in Akan suggests an offering, to have someone at the receiving end, to desire to let go completely, often assuming trust exists, which is jidie, which sounds often like jidi, take and eat. Someone cooks a meal, palatable or not, boiled yams with okra stew, male crabs, cowhide, perhaps gives it to you in a clean bowl, food that may turn your intestines outside in or clean your red throat. You lick your lips and thank your tongue. But how do you take God? Jinyame, unless they mean to say except for God, for Nyame cannot be chewed on like the bones of a quail or kept in the palm like sweat. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over back to Elizabeth now.
That was wonderful, and I can't wait to hear some of the questions and conversation about your poems afterwards. Okay, I now have the honor of introducing our second poet, Jacqueline Johnson. Jacqueline is a Brooklyn-based multidisciplined artist creating in poetry, fiction, writing, and fiber arts. She is the author of A Woman's Season on Main Street Rag Press and A Gathering of Mother Tongues published by White Pine Press, and is the winner of the 3rd annual White Pine Press Poetry Award. Her work has appeared in Show Us Your Papers on Main Street Rag Press 2020, Revisiting the Elegy in the Black Lives Matter Era, Routledge 2020, About Place Journal, the Langston Hughes Review, and the Slowdown, and American Public Media, October 16th, 2019. Sorry, I think that's connected to the Slowdown. She is a Cave Canem Fellow and a Black Earth Institute Fellow from 2018 to 2021. Works in progress include a novel, The Privilege of Memory and How to Stop a Hurricane, a collection of short stories. She is a graduate of New York University and the City University of New York, and Ms. Johnson comes from a line of shipbuilders. In reading and listening to her read her poetry, I was struck by the ways in which her connection to her ancestors and the sea speaks to the role that the ocean plays in the founding of the city of Newport and the history of Africans in Newport. So over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks to everyone at the Redwood Library and at the Middle Passage Project for putting this together. I'm going to start off from my first book, A Gathering of Mother Tongues, and I have one poem. It's called The Daughter, Bahia. Many years ago, I went to Bahia, and I had wanted to go to Africa, but my money would only get me as far as Bahia. So we think of Africa as a mother, and I thought of Bahia as the daughter. The daughter, Bahia. I am caught in the roar of the ocean. Mad movement of eddies and waves make patchwork designs with moonlight. Waves rise, salt sea air dances on my skin. It is here that I come to find the muse, listen to the call of Yemaja. song of my own voice blending into a night 400 years long. I imagine an overburdened ship, her cargo a people this land has never seen before, storm-ridden night, evil and dark as eternity. Moon heavy and weeping, windy break between land and sea is where I notice coming of first blacks, their weakened limbs trembling, darting eyes take in the scarred reddened face of the daughter, Bahia, so much like home, but different. In the first breath of dawn, I surrender to the mystical sight of the Bay of Saints, 1,000 drums beating, go-go bells ringing. I capture time, cross turquoise waters, jump spirit bridges to see, remember their fury and songs. Palmettos blue and golden moan still flow in my blood as I walk on the land of the daughter. Our next poem is This America. Soft leaves of a real spring, bursting free on every branch. So glad to be a part of creation. 7 artists sitting in a half circle, each a lit flame. We don't have all the answers our people crave, but together we can create something we can survive with. Savor the sister in white, smudging sage over policemen in riot gear. What mojo do we need for this new time, where protesters are framed as terrorists? This week we are asked to believe a lone Black man broke his own spine in 3 places. How do we protect ourselves in this America? Okay, I'm going between sheets and paper and different books. This poem is from my second book, A Woman's Season. And this is called Cosmic Zora, and I'm dedicating it to Zora Neale Hurston, to the late Zora Neale Hurston. Word Mambo, elder, prodigal, owner of John de Conqueror, golden daughter of Eatonville, dry long soul gal, Hunikin's handmaiden, owner of the speakerly text, Janie's mouthpiece, keeper of tongues, silver sing and trumpet, song gatherer, singer of work songs, field hollers, party tunes, game songs. Wealth was in collecting stories, challenging Alan Lomax's thievery, fighting with Langston to the early AM. A lone brown woman wandering about Harlem, measuring heads, or off to Haiti, learning dances of the Loas, Urzuli, Dambala. Always out of time, you barely had a home in the States, found shelter in the Caribbean, eclipsed by jealousy, poverty, social blindness, carrying timbre of Bessie Smith. Living hand to mouth, dealing for dollars where others played for thousands. Ancient market woman, exchanging lies and half-truths for long desired, charmed life. And this next poem actually comes out of the anthology Revisiting the Elegy in the Black Lives Matter era. And this is called Soul Memory, and it's for a young woman, the late Renisha McBride. Forgive the grandmother who found you, barely conscious, mumbling, stupid, drunk, walking circles around your car, who thought she could leave you and go back into her house. Forgive the loss of motherhood, the inability to grab you and bring you, daughter, you, baby girl, on into the house. Forgive her, lost in the disconnect of centuries, to not call for an ambulance to get you help. Forgive her return to the street to find you, gone, out of sight. Too old to follow you, to get someone, anyone, to go look for you. Forgive yourself for going out that night, of all nights, to party and drink, to hang out like any normal 19-year-old, to believe you were in control. Forgive the lost ones of you. Forgive the night so dark your brown-skinned self could not be found. Forgive your Ori, so blindly drunk and in shock from a car crash. Forgive the incoherent selves, wandering, only knowing to see help, crying for help. Forgive this moment, day that you went into that all-white woods and neighborhood. Forgive yourself, so lost, motherwit and fatherwit gone, so lost, so shocked, so drunk you rang that man's door, and all your last moments lost in the horror of shots to your head, heart, and soul. Forgive the night you wanted to party so, wanted to live so. Forgive all the wrong turns, the last 4 drinks you had. Forgive yourself for thinking somehow you were in control. Had done this how many times before? Forgive the cursed moment of speed, of all the wrong turns, of walking and walking on the longest walk that would never end until you were nothing but soul. Lost black woman, lost black girl, on a white porch in a place so bad he never gave you a chance. Came out shooting at your blackness, black woman blackness, seeking help. Forgive this time, the moment that never gave you a chance. Forgive all the wrong turns, the speed, the drinks, the desire to party. Forgive this time that never gave you a chance. And I have a poem that I didn't get to write much during this pandemic. Um, I think I might have written 3 poems, and this is one of the 3. It's called Ode to Iyansa. And you will, as you hear the poem, you'll learn who Iyansa is. Iyansa, austere gates of divine mystery, which you so aptly guard, are now flung open, accepting so many from the hospitals, nursing homes, streets, and transit. The lines between the city of the living and the city of the dead now blurred, open for quick crossings without rituals or ceremonies of leave taking and long goodbyes. Once you were content to be the keeper of secrets, wearing a rose-colored head wrap, quietly attending to the new returnees, your legion of invisible ones, always willing to aid the living. Now the city where I live has so many dead. You have taken up residence in parking lots with truckloads of former husbands, wives, grandmothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. In this America, your power is unquantifiable as we count lives lost and transfigured forever. You now are stronger than you ever intended to be. Your tears flow unceasing. Fight to keep as many as you can alive. Iyansa, goddess whose gifts can both save us and give others a quick, merciful end. We dream of a different time, yet unborn. Purple-hued tempests fly all around the earth, where only a hint of your power is mirrored. Iyansa, fierce owner of the ancestral realm, bless the day you can close your gates. And I'd like to read something a little lighter. This is a poem I wrote for Nina Simone. I was blessed to see her twice in life. The first time I brought 10 people to see her. We were at the Village Vanguard, and I don't know, management made her mad. And all I know is I saw her come out the back door and get in her car and drive away. I had to take 10 people for drinks. How about that? Anyway, Black Gold Redux. Vocalize anger of a generation lived in your throat. Sometimes you left yourself while still at the piano. Cultivated respect for sound making, form of the body, demanded the best, did not always receive it, wore golden garments of adornment, wrist-size earrings, raw silk afro. Major musicians either keep up or get off the stage. Didn't really need a drum. Your voice was chant, sea island moan. a priestess prayer song. And I'm going to close with a poem that is a Japanese poetic form. It's called the Zuhitsu. Kimiko Han is credited with reviving it. She taught it to Cheryl Boyce Taylor, who taught it to me. And the thing about the Zuhitsu is I consider it a form where you have you can have a list, a shopping list, a ransom note, directions to get to the moon, whatever, a paragraph from a novel. It's what I call the kitchen sink form, which is not exactly kind, but in this particular poem, which I'm dedicating to my grandfather Henry Jenkins, I have a letter. I have a blues poem I wrote, and I have references, historical references that are true to my family. And I think that the poem will tell you, the references are explained within the body of the poem. It's in 5 sections, and it's called Water Stories, Mosquito Fleet. 1. My grandfather was a boat builder, belonged to the famed mosquito fleet. Countless sea of Negro men who fished the coastal waters of Charleston, Edisto, Dafuski, Kewah, James Island, St. Helena, Johns, and Sullivan Islands. This one summer, I am a guest along Connecticut coast in East Haddam, sailing upon small streams and rivers. Our captain is barefoot with a black Peruvian ankle bracelet, a strawberry blonde sporting a white cap. His face a cliche of contrast, heather blue eyes, burnt red skin, soft age lines around his mouth. Here most of the boat owners are white. We 3 are the rare queens on the water this day. We head for Venture Smith's Islands, so small one can island hop. Venture, a Senegalese slave, worked the land and waterfront until he was able to buy his freedom. True original black capitalist, made a fortune freeing his brethren to work for him. No indentured servant. So harsh and long was his treatment of the newly freed men that many went back to slavery rather than work for him. 2. What blues, what fear fills a man's soul so that one morning he leaves his wife and children and gets on a boat to New York? The blues is about one thing, a man and a woman. Robin Johnson meets a Geechee woman. Played his guitar like 12 men sat inside. Played his guitar like 12 men was inside. Brown 5-string Jesus, double belly wide. Was an 8-rock man meant to sing the blues. Was an 8-rock man meant to play backbone blues. Oh, that devil's daughter, goddess and his muse. Bargained his mojo for a cat he could barely see. Bargained his gins for a cat he could barely see. Devil was low, but that woman took all of him. 3. It was 1929. The Great Depression had just hit. Grandpa would walk holes in his only shoes, looking for work in a city out of work, in a city out of money. Who knows how long it took him to get the good job at the Brooklyn Navy Yard? How long it took for the heart to heal? 4. 3 of us sit in the late afternoon sun, warm wind dancing a hosanna in my hair. I learn the names of sails I will never hoist and think of you, Grandpa, and your 4-bedroom apartment in Harlem with the white majestic boats in bottles sitting on the mantelpiece. From the hill where you lived, one can hear stories of a lifetime. The blues is about one thing, a man and a woman, A Woman and Her Money. The remix version, A Woman and Her Dreams. Dear Al Young, hope the music is living well in your soul. Listen, I finally finished that blues poem. Only took 8 years. You knew only time would teach me what the blues really are. Not just sadness. No need to be the last sad Black woman. Blues is sure and certain triumph over that which would kill one. Thanks for the long patience. Love you, Jacqueline. 5. On the boat, Sonia swears she swam in the Egyptian Ocean for 3 days, riding the rudder like a mermaid. No sunburn or salt-crusted hair. My great-grandfather, Fred Jenkins, was a seaman and a boat builder too. In the sepia photographs, his dark, deep-set eyes enchant. One cruel evening, his trawler, the Dart, was crushed by a large steamship in Charleston Harbor. Now the captain offers me the wheel. I turn the boat towards the horizon's goal. We're going to Africa, I shout. We're going to Africa. That's it.
Wow. Well, thank you both so much. Really powerful stuff. I'd like to open it up to questions. Maybe Elizabeth Folk has some questions that she has prepared. I'm not seeing any down below in the ask a question. Seeing lots of claps and appreciative comments. Elizabeth, did you?
Sure, I can start us off. Yes, thank you. And wow, yes, Benedict took the words out of my mouth. I was thinking, wow, after both of the readings. I noticed that both of you, well, the poem that you just ended with, Jacqueline, you write about the blues, and Afua, I know you use the Adinkra symbol, so like you're using visual art in your poetry. So I'm wondering how you take another art form like music or visual art and turn it into a poem, because that's a lot harder than one might think it is. So maybe you can talk about, each of you can talk about that process a little bit.
You want to go ahead? Okay. I think when I came to the Adinkra symbols, because it's something that I recognized as part of me, I didn't see it as separate from poetry, right? So many of the Adinkra symbols are named after proverbs and have such poetic names that it's difficult to sort of detach and say, oh, this is just an art object, right? It's so much part of our lives, right? So our Khans use proverbs as a way of teaching the youth how to be responsible as they're growing, right? And so I didn't see it as separate. I saw it as sort of opening it up and digging in to see more of the poetry that I had not even identified in the symbols at first. And so when you see the symbols initially, you think just of the direct meaning, right? So Sankofa, you just think of the bird, right? But when you look deeper, you're thinking of, okay, how is this bird looking at its back? Like, breaking its neck to reach back into lineage important? How is it a poetic form of transformation, a poetic form of holding on to the thing that you need to dearly in order to value your future? So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, and I think for me in my writing process, I know for certain I don't have anything unless I can first see it. I have to have an image that I'm working from. And because I'm a fiber artist, I go back and forth. I have quilts with poems on them. Nice. But for me, I often am pulling from art, visual art. My house is like a dressed up museum. So I'm constantly dipping into artistic waters. And I have many poems. Like I have a poem called The Siesta that I wrote by a by a picture of the same name from Gauguin. I'm constantly talking to art and listening to it, and it's definitely one of my sources for work.
Thank you. I don't know if there's a question from somebody.
There is a question. I see it. Excuse me. I'll thank you both. Did you find the Zuihitsu form difficult to pick up or master?
It seems like a really unwieldy thing, like a monstrous thing with all these separate and weird pieces, but every time I've written one, there's something that unifies all the sections. And it's not necessarily a tidy end or closing, but it's always unified somehow. I had a lot of fun with it because I was already working some poems that way. I have something I teach my students, which is a similar thing I call it African Zouklaki, which is basically, I pick 5 things and say, give me a poem using these 5 different disparate sources. It wasn't so hard to learn. But for me, my interpretation of it had to do with making the line shorter. Kamiko Han's use of the Zuihitsu are large prosaic paragraphs. I personally did not want to write in that way. So I consciously strove to make what I did shorter.
Elizabeth, did you have other questions?
I do.
Yourself?
Yes, yeah. And I also do want to encourage other folks to ask if they feel like they'd like to know more. I think, you talked about teaching, Jacqueline, and I've been taught poetry myself, and I know Afua has. There's students always think that the poet is the persona in the poem. So I'm wondering, when you write your poems, when is it based on your own personal experience, maybe out of the ones that we've heard? When are you adopting a persona? Do you adopt a persona? Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
I teach persona. I teach it in a very specific way, and I demand that my students not write about themselves, but find someone who's completely different from them, whose experience they have to, you might have to research to be a Japanese cross-dresser. I don't know. But I ask them to go outside of their comfort zone to write a persona. I use it to access emotions and feelings and different types of ways of being and different types of knowledge that are larger than me, that go beyond my experience. And there's something about writing persona that, yes, you're telling some part of your story, some part of your emotional life, some part of your psyche or spiritual life, or an actual experience, but you're the starting part, not the end. And the key is to jump off from your life into the persona you have adopted. I'm gonna shut my mouth.
No, I definitely will agree with that. To say that you do begin with yourself, because that's how you connect with the poem, but you never end with yourself, because if you do, then it's sort of like it would be like writing in your diary, right? But you are transformed into something else, and that becomes, I believe, what poetry is. I recently wrote a poem, and the end was so jarring to me, because I was like, I would never write something like that. And I was like, because it's not my poem, right? This is the what has come out of the creation space. And at the end of the poem, the person, the speaker, asked for the head of the queen, right, on a silver platter. And it's like, I am too nice to even, ask for murder in a poem, but it's what's really exhilarating about, putting yourself out of the way and allowing the elements of the poem to connect and work itself out.
Thanks. I guess another question I wanted to ask was, I appreciate how both of you take this very musical medium of poetry, but don't shy away from the political. Like, again, there sometimes seems to be a separation of the two. But maybe you could speak to how you go about weaving in these sort of heavier themes into such beautiful poetry.
I guess Jacqueline was waiting for me to start. Yes, okay. I think it's impossible to talk about the Black body without being political, and even especially the Black woman without being political. And so when I think of myself as a subject, as a beginning force of the poem that I'm creating, I see myself as a Black woman. I see myself as an immigrant woman, right? And so I have to deal with all these forces or these systems as part of my identity. And there's no way in which I can sing my song of freedom or sing my song of identity without encapsulating these political ideas. And I think that's also what makes me build my identity in the poem even stronger, because it's not just I'm dealing with one distinct, one specific identity, but I have all these multiple various things that I'm throwing in there, right? So today I can be Black and think about ways in which, my physical body and my generation is in danger. And then I can be immigrant and think about ways in which I'm yearning for a home, right? I can have the opportunity to return to a home, or that I have to make this new place I have found my home.
I don't really separate it from the work. I think the political is one of many lenses that I use. I use history. A lot of the poems that I write that are considered political really come out of being very troubled and disturbed by what's going on in our contemporary culture. So I might be sitting up all night and a piece may come. And then there are pieces that I seek out. I research them. But I don't see the political as separate from anything that I do in my process. I come from very political people, and I was mentored by very political people. And I don't see it as an option. It's just something I have to do,
I think there might be another question.
Oh, yes, so sorry. Really loved your poems featuring Ghanaian meals. Can you talk about how writing food helps you with memory?
Yeah, it's obvious that I love food. I grew up in Ghana, in Accra, with my grandmother, and my grandmother had a weak leg, and so I sort of was her other leg, I would say, and I would bring the tomato, I would bring the asanka, which is like an earthenware bowl where we grind food in. I would sort of also be her hands. And so when all my siblings and my cousins would be out doing whatever they want, she'd be like, Afua, I'll be the one person that she would call on to help her. And so I saw the ways in which Ghanaian food will come together in the natural ways. I discovered elephant ears, which in Ghana is called nkontomire. It's mixed together with peppers and tomatoes and palm oil, and everything is so natural, not as processed as American food. And so every time I would think about these Ghanaian foods, I would think about home. I would think about my grandmother, who also had a garden. And so I would assist her with the garden, peppers. I saw that yams have a stick, right? So you have to plant a stick so that the leaves could climb around it. And it was so beautiful to me, because I thought yams grew from the leaves, but they're deeply rooted in the ground. And just the effort of having to pull them out and having to make sure that the rodents and the bats don't come to eat the fruits, and how my grandmother would be so upset when she would come and see all her work and toil, eaten by these insects and pests. And so I definitely believe that food takes me directly to home. I always say that if I wasn't Ghanaian, I would come back as Ghanaian, because I could never trade the flavor, that my home gives me. So that's how home inspires food inspires memories of home. Thank you for that question.
I think I and probably some of the other attendees want to know a little more about the Nina Simone story, Jacqueline.
Definitely.
It was one of those nights in the village. The second time I went to see her was at Avery Fisher Hall, and had a good orchestra seat. And it was just her and her favorite guitarist. They didn't have a huge band, so it was very stripped down and wonderful. It was just wonderful. And I was so enthralled by her. I got up and said to my friend, "We're going backstage." And she looked at me like, "Huh?" And I walked right backstage and got online and met her. And she was wonderful and generous in person. But I have about 50 Nina Simone albums. I'm the last person I know that still got albums, but I got a really cheap record player and I don't care. I'm thanking the hip hop generation for scratching up records so that the record player as an object, as a technical thing, is still in the culture. I'm not sure it would still be with us if they had not done that. So I can still play my albums, haha. But I have about 50 of them. And at some point I'll give them to an archive of some kind. Although I enjoy my music. I haven't played it in 100 years, but I have them. Now I'm buying them as MP3s. Kind of makes me mad to buy something that I already have in a different format, but that's the time we're in. You have to keep stepping.
Exactly.
Elizabeth, anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
Great. Well, certainly, amazing stuff. I think people much appreciated it. Thank you so much for participating and joining us this evening. I want to thank our speakers and Elizabeth Falk, of course, and I want to invite everyone to join us next week for another music appreciation series with Dr. Edwin Marquardt. And he'll be talking to us about Between the Wars, Part 4, The Americans. Just visit our website to register. We look forward to seeing you again next week. And certainly I want to thank our speakers this evening. Really powerful stuff. Really, thank you so much. Thank you. So have a great evening, everyone. And if you're not a member, go ahead and join. If you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. And I should mention, I believe that this talk will be, this whole presentation will be mounted on our website, on our, our YouTube channel. So you can hear the poems again. If I'm mistaken, and I don't think I am, I'm sorry, but I think that's usually what we do with our presentations. So thank you all so much and have a great evening. Thank you.